We are already in the collapse. And so therefore, the time to prepare for these things is already short. And by short, I mean it's almost gone. You need to be taking steps right now to be prepared for what's coming. The food shortages are just going to get worse. The price increases are going to get worse. What are we going into? Are we going into a Great Depression? Are we going into the end of the United States empire across the world? The monetary system collapsing, the financial system collapsing? Remember, these systems, when they may take decades and decades and decades to build up, they take months and sometimes over a few years for them to completely collapse. We see this in other countries where things happen almost instantaneously. Before we jump into all that, I do want to just pass along a quick word from Roland, who is with Survivor Fire Starters. I had a video on him the other day, and many of you did go over and make some orders, and so he wanted to pass along his thanks for supporting his business. Once again, he is making those fire starters in his garage. It's his side hustle, his passion, but also a way for him to make money doing business. He does a lot of these shows, and he was just at a show yesterday. I talked to him afterwards, and as he said, trying to sell fire to people in 100-degree weather in Texas is rather difficult. But so he just appreciated a lot of you guys coming over and supporting his small business. He makes these things here in the United States in his garage, of course. So he just wanted me to pass along that all the orders through this Friday are going to be getting a thank you gift, kind of a carabiner with a little mini flashlight. So it looks like one of these kind of things, just an LED flashlight. It's just a thank you to everyone. So he really appreciates your support on that. Once again, the description down below has a link to him, and I'll pin it in the comments as well. If you want to go over and support his business by buying some Christmas gifts or birthday gifts for people, as I said, giving them to people who are not into preparedness or prepping might be a gateway to get people into that. But anyway, so we need to be taking all the steps we can today, whether that's to become more financially secure, like what Roland's been doing for the past 2 decades, working on the side with his business here, or whether it's us stocking up on food, whether it's us building those relationships. Once again, not everything is about money. Some of it is about building relationships with our community, with people around us, because what got people through the Great Depression in the United States long ago was more their relationships than it was the stuff that they had. People walked into the Great Depression with food stored up, with farms that were productive. They were self-sustainable in a lot of ways that we do not do today. Many of them were farmers. Back there, and far more had homesteads and farms in their families that they could go back home to. So even though they moved to the city, they still had relatives that were still living out on farms. So they could do that. They did have food stocked up because that was just common practice back then, was to make sure you had a deep pantry, make sure you canned your own food. Stuff that came out of your garden, you made sure that you put away for a rainy day or at least for the winter. When we talk about 6 months food supply, back then that was just common practice that, if you didn't have 6 months food supply stored up in your basement or your root cellar, how are you going to get through the winter, right? And so we just have this question of, are we doing too little too late? I recently came onto this property. I've been on this new property for about 1.5 years. Before, I was living in an apartment almost downtown Pittsburgh, and I was quite nervous about that because I didn't really have the ability to stockpile. I didn't really have the ability to really grow out a garden, and by really, I mean I wasn't allowed to plant stuff around the apartment. So I was in a bind. So I'm relatively new to the party of being able to really start expanding my garden. I'm way behind. And so some of us are playing catch up. Some of you have just come on board to getting prepared for what's coming in the last few months. And you may ask yourself, is it too little, too late? And the answer is no. Any little bit that you can do is going to get you further ahead. Once again, as I always say, that it is your adaptability that is going to be critical. And if you have less stockpiled, if you're less self-sufficient right now, your adaptability and your willingness to work really hard is what's really going to get you through. There's going to be some lazy people who have stockpiled that are going to really struggle when the times get tough, and there's going to be some people who haven't stockpiled much, but through their industry and their adaptability are going to seize on opportunities and are going to thrive even in very troubling times. Yes, it's possible to thrive in troubling times. When we talk about the scope of things, generally things will get very bad, but particularly things may actually go well for you if you can get yourself into a good position. If you're a farmer that produces food for your local community, you may have really struggled financially through the good times, but then when the hard times come, you may become the center of your community where everyone suddenly really respects you and they really highly value your time and what you bring to the community. So you may actually do better. Maybe not quite so much financially. You may struggle very much financially still, but from being a kind of like a marginalized person in society to being like a central figure in the community. Because not everything is about money, like I said. A lot of it has to do with relationships. And you being held in high respect and high regard by people is important. I mean, we all long to be people that are seen as leaders. We all long to be, maybe we don't all want to be leaders because sometimes that's a little too much pressure. And some of you are like, I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be out there in the front of the public. I'd rather stay in the background. And that's understandable, but you'd at least want to be seen as someone who can influence people for good. That's what leadership really is influence. And I think that we should all be trying to increase our influence, not necessarily like by starting a YouTube channel or running for mayor of your town, but seeking to widen your circle of friendships and deepen your circle of friendships where you can more deeply impact people. We want to be people that when we pass away, which is going to happen to all of us, you know, a wise person considers our end, right? And your end is going to be in a 6-foot hole in the ground, just like my end is going to be a 6-foot hole in the ground. Unless it's really hard times, then it might be 3-foot hole in the ground. They may not be willing to dig that deep. And if it happens in the wintertime, that can be really rough if they're digging by hand. So, but that's our end. We're going to end up in a hole in the ground. So what are you going to leave behind? What kind of legacy are you going to leave behind? That's the real question. And that's not going to depend so much on how much rice and beans you've stocked up, but rather how you treat people and the relationships and the investments you make in people before you go. Whether it's your family who has been deeply impacted by your life that is around your grave, or whether that is your entire town, your entire neighborhood has been touched by your life, and so they all come out to pay their respects for you who hasn't had an impact on their life. So stockpile for sure. Get more self-sufficient for sure. But along the way, realize that those are just tools to get you where you need to be, which is being a person of influence for good in the world. Whether it's helping people grow spiritually in their relationship to the world and to God, or whether that's just making other people's lives better, which is it's the same thing. I'm just saying in different ways. By us giving the cup of cold water to those who are in need, protecting the widows and the orphans in our community as best you can, by giving people another chance who are really down and out, giving them a place to crash on your property while they get back on their feet. Making wise choices, but making those choices to invest in people is really what life is about. It's not about who ends this life with the most rice and beans. It's not about who has the coolest garden. It's, in the end, who has had the most and deepest impact on the most people in their lives. That's the only real way you become immortal from this earthly perspective, is through the impact you have on other people. Now, I believe that our spirit goes on and that we truly are immortal. But when it comes to our impact on people on this earth, it's not the stuff. Once again, it is the people that matter. That's why I keep saying stockpile extra so you can help other people, because that is my purpose in life. I understand that clearly, that to the extent that I help other people and pour into other people's lives, that gives my life meaning. And now my life is a little bit different than some of you. If you have a family that is dependent upon you, it is your responsibility to care for them. And that is a higher priority. As a single person and no kids and everything like that, my primary focus is to care for the people in my church, particularly those who are vulnerable. That is my calling. You need to protect your spouse and your kids. If you've been blessed with those in your life, that is your primary responsibility. And then to your extended family, of course, and then to your community as well. But just keeping those things in perspective, realizing that the time is short. Let's pour into people's lives and really make an impact on people. That's what I got for you. Is it too little, too late? No. Do what you can, but always keep people at the forefront of your focus. All right, folks, that's what I got for you today. If you like this video, you might want to check out this video here as well. Otherwise, I will see you later. Steve Poplar, out.